The sound of heels clicking against the marble floor echoed through the sterile hallway, each step louder than the last. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting a cold glow over her clenched fists and trembling frame. Arya stood outside the glass-walled conference room, her chest heaving as she tried to steady herself. Inside, her boss, Mr. Caldwell, was mid-presentation, gesturing animatedly at the sleek presentation slides projected on the wall. His voice carried through the thin walls, confident, commanding, completely unaware that his carefully orchestrated $70 million deal was about to unravel. Arya's heart pounded in her ears, drowning out everything else. She had spent 3 years climbing the ranks in this corporate monolith, pouring every ounce of energy into making herself indispensable. And now? Now she was standing here, freshly fired over something as trivial as wearing sneakers to work instead of stilettos. It wasn't even an official rule, it was an unspoken expectation, whispered among employees like some kind of secret code for success. But apparently, it was enough to justify her dismissal. Her mind raced back to earlier that morning, replaying the scene with razor-sharp clarity. She'd walked into the office feeling invincible, fresh off closing a major client pitch that would have secured millions for the company. Her team had celebrated briefly before diving back into preparations for today's big meeting, the one where they were supposed to seal the $70 million partnership deal with Technova Industries. Everything had been going perfectly until Mr. Caldwell called her into his office. "You can't show up looking like that," he'd said, his tone dripping with disdain as he gestured vaguely toward her feet. "This is a professional environment, not a gym." She remembered staring down at her black leather sneakers, dumbfounded. They were clean, stylish even, a far cry from the scuffed loafers most men wore without batting an eye. When she dared to argue, pointing out how hard she'd worked to land the client, his expression turned icy. "It's not just about the shoes, Arya," he snapped. "It's about respect. You're setting a bad example for everyone else." And then came the words that still burned in her chest, effective immediately: "Your employment with us is terminated." No severance package. No chance to defend herself. Just a security guard escorting her to her desk to collect her things while her co-workers pretended not to notice. Humiliation didn't begin to cover it. But now, standing here in the hallway with adrenaline coursing through her veins, humiliation wasn't what fueled her anymore. It was anger. Pure, white-hot rage. Because as much as Caldwell wanted to pretend otherwise, this wasn't just about dress codes or professionalism. This was about control. About keeping people in their place. About ensuring no one ever questioned the rules, even when those rules made no sense. Inside the conference room, Caldwell paused dramatically, letting his words hang in the air. "And with this groundbreaking collaboration, we'll revolutionize the industry," he announced, spreading his arms wide as if embracing the future itself. Around the table, executives from both companies nodded approvingly, scribbling notes and exchanging impressed glances. Arya could see the excitement in their eyes, the way they leaned forward in anticipation of signing the dotted line. What none of them knew, not yet anyway, was that Arya held the key to bringing the entire thing crashing down. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly to find the email thread she'd saved months ago. It was a risky move, keeping evidence like this, but deep down, she'd always suspected something like this might happen. Corporate betrayal wasn't exactly rare in this world, it was practically expected. Still, she hadn't imagined it would hit so close to home, or hurt quite this much. The email chain detailed conversations between Caldwell and several high-ranking members of Technova, discussing ways to manipulate the terms of the deal to benefit Caldwell's personal interests. There were side agreements, hidden clauses, promises of kickbacks, all meticulously documented in black and white. If anyone saw this, the deal would collapse faster than a house of cards. For a moment, Arya hesitated. Was she really willing to go there? To expose not only Caldwell, but also the company she'd given so much of herself to? Could she live with the fallout? Then she thought about all the late nights, the weekends sacrificed, the countless times she'd swallowed her pride because she believed in the mission. Believed in the idea that hard work and dedication could earn you a seat at the table. And for what? To be dismissed over a pair of damn shoes? Her jaw tightened, resolve solidifying like steel. Oh yes, she was willing. Taking a deep breath, Arya stepped forward, pushing open the heavy glass door. Every head in the room turned to look at her, surprise rippling across their faces. Caldwell froze mid-sentence, his smile faltering as recognition dawned. For a split second, he looked almost afraid. "Arya," he said, his voice sharp with warning. "What are you doing here?" She ignored him, striding purposefully to the center of the room. Her gaze swept over the assembled executives, taking in their expensive suits and polished demeanors. These were the people who ran the world, who made decisions that affected thousands of lives without ever having to face the consequences. People like Caldwell, who thrived on power and manipulation. "I think you should see this," she said calmly, holding up her phone. On the screen was the damning email chain, enlarged for everyone to read. Gasps rippled through the room as the truth unfolded before their eyes. Caldwell lunged toward her, his face flushed with panic. "Turn that off," he barked, reaching for the device. But Arya sidestepped him effortlessly, her movements precise and deliberate. "Oh, I don't think so," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "You wanted respect, right? Well, let's talk about what real respect looks like." The room erupted into chaos. Executives shouted questions, accusations flew back and forth, and Caldwell's carefully constructed facade crumbled before her very eyes. Yet amidst the turmoil, Arya felt strangely calm. This was her moment, the moment she reclaimed her power. As the confrontation escalated, Arya noticed one of the Technova executives watching her intently. Unlike the others, whose expressions ranged from shock to outrage, this woman, Dr. Elena Vasquez, seemed oddly intrigued. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, studying Arya with a calculating gaze. When their eyes met, Dr. Vasquez raised an eyebrow, silently challenging her to keep going. Arya straightened her posture, meeting the challenge head-on. Whatever happened next, she was ready. Dr. Vasquez's gaze lingered on Arya for a moment longer before she finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. "Well," she said, her tone measured but laced with curiosity, "this is certainly unexpected." She leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the table as if settling in for a show. "Care to explain how you came across this information, Ms.?" "Arya," she replied firmly, meeting the woman's eyes without flinching. "And yes, I'd be happy to explain. But first, maybe we should address why your company is entering into a deal based on lies and manipulation." The room fell silent again, all eyes shifting between Arya and Dr. Vasquez. Caldwell sputtered indignantly from the corner, his face reddening further as he tried, and failed, to regain control of the situation. "This is outrageous," he barked, pointing an accusatory finger at Arya. "She has no right to." "Actually," Dr. Vasquez interrupted coolly, holding up a hand to silence him, "she does. If what's on that screen is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it, we've been misled. And if there's one thing Technova doesn't tolerate, it's dishonesty." Arya felt a flicker of satisfaction at Caldwell's visible recoil. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about exposing the truth and forcing accountability where none existed. Still, she knew better than to let her guard down. The battle wasn't over yet. Dr. Vasquez turned her attention back to Arya, her expression softening ever so slightly. "You mentioned you'd explain how you obtained this evidence. I assume it wasn't handed to you willingly." "No," Arya admitted, gripping her phone tightly. "I saved these emails months ago when I started noticing discrepancies in the way deals were being handled. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but then patterns emerged. Things didn't add up. So I kept records. Just in case." "In case of what?" Dr. Vasquez pressed, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. "In case someone decided to throw you under the bus over something as petty as footwear?" A murmur rippled through the room, followed by a few nervous chuckles. Even Arya couldn't help but smirk at the jab. "Something like that," she said dryly. "Though honestly, I didn't think it would come to this. Not today, anyway." "Well," Dr. Vasquez mused, leaning back in her chair again, "you certainly have our attention now. Though I must admit, I'm curious, what exactly do you hope to achieve here? You're not part of this company anymore, are you?" Arya hesitated, the question catching her off guard. What did she want? Justice? Vindication? Or was it something deeper, a chance to prove that integrity still mattered in a world obsessed with profit margins and power plays? "I want transparency," she said finally, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. "I want people to know the truth about how decisions are made behind closed doors. And maybe I want to remind everyone that companies are built by people, not suits or titles or dress codes." People who deserve respect, fairness, and honesty. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, Dr. Vasquez began to clap. The sound was sharp and deliberate, echoing through the tense silence. One by one, other members of the Technova team joined in, their applause hesitant at first but growing louder as the gravity of Aria's actions sank in. Caldwell looked like he might explode. "This is absurd," he shouted, slamming his fist on the conference table. "She's a disgruntled ex-employee trying to sabotage us out of spite." "Is she?" Dr. Vasquez countered smoothly, arching a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she's doing exactly what we should have done ourselves, asking questions, demanding answers, and refusing to accept anything less than the truth." The room erupted into murmurs again, the tide clearly turning against Caldwell. Aria could see the panic in his eyes, the realization dawning that he'd underestimated her, and perhaps everyone else in the process. He opened his mouth to argue, but whatever he intended to say died on his lips as Dr. Vasquez stood abruptly, her presence commanding the space. "Enough," she declared, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "We need to regroup. Clearly, there are issues here that require further investigation. Until then, I suggest we table this discussion." With that, she turned to Aria, extending a hand. "Thank you, Ms. Aria. Your courage is refreshing. We'll be in touch." Aria blinked, momentarily stunned. Was this really happening? Had she just gone from being fired over sneakers to earning the respect of one of the most powerful women in the industry? She shook Dr. Vasquez's hand cautiously, unsure of what to say. As the executives filed out of the room, leaving Caldwell standing alone amidst the wreckage of his own making, Aria allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a start. Later that evening, Aria sat on a park bench overlooking the city skyline, her phone buzzing incessantly in her pocket. Messages poured in from former colleagues, friends, even strangers who had somehow caught wind of what happened. Some praised her bravery, others warned her to tread carefully. But one message stood out among the rest. It was from Dr. Vasquez. "Elena Vasquez. Impressive work today. Let's talk soon. There may be opportunities worth exploring." Aria stared at the text for a long time, her mind racing with possibilities. Opportunities? What kind of opportunities? And more importantly, was she ready to step into whatever came next? The weight of the day settled heavily on her shoulders, exhaustion creeping in alongside the adrenaline crash. Yet despite everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer audacity of taking on a corporate giant, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. For the first time, she realized, she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for something bigger. But as the lights of the city twinkled in the distance, casting reflections on the surface of the river below, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, it wouldn't be easy. The road to change never was. But as long as she stayed true to herself, and to the values she believed in, she knew she could face it head-on. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. Another message. Another challenge waiting to be met. And somewhere deep inside, Aria smiled. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Aria found herself at the center of a media storm, with reporters clamoring for interviews and social media ablaze with hashtags like #RespectOverrules and #AriaStandStrong. Her story resonated far beyond the confines of corporate boardrooms, striking a chord with anyone who had ever felt dismissed or devalued in their workplace. People shared tales of their own struggles, of being judged not by their work but by arbitrary standards, of fighting systems designed to keep them small. Dr. Elena Vasquez reached out within 48 hours, inviting Aria to meet at Technova's headquarters. The sleek glass building loomed over the city skyline, its modern architecture radiating power and innovation. As Aria walked through its doors, she couldn't help but feel a mix of trepidation and excitement. This wasn't just another office, it was a symbol of possibility. Elena greeted her warmly, leading her to a private conference room overlooking the bustling streets below. "Let's cut to the chase," Elena began, her tone direct yet kind. "What you did took guts. Not many people would risk everything to expose corruption, especially when they've already been wronged. That tells me two things. One, you're fiercely principled. And two, you're exactly the kind of person we need right now." Aria raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Need for what?" "For change," Elena replied simply. Technova has always prided itself on being forward-thinking, but let's be honest, we're not immune to the same issues plaguing every other company. Power dynamics, unchecked ambition, lack of accountability. We can do better. And I believe you can help us get there. Over the next hour, Elena outlined her vision, a new division within Technova dedicated to fostering ethical leadership and transparency across industries. It would involve auditing internal practices, consulting with other companies to implement fairer policies, and creating platforms for employees to voice concerns without fear of retaliation. At its core, it was about redefining success, not just as profit margins, but as meaningful impact. And you want me to lead this? Arya asked, incredulous. I wouldn't have called if I didn't, Elena said with a knowing smile. You've proven you have the courage and conviction to challenge the status quo. Now, I'm offering you the resources and support to make real change happen. For a moment, Arya was speechless. This was more than she'd dared to hope for, a chance not only to rebuild her career but to shape the future of corporate culture. Still, doubts lingered. Could she handle the responsibility? Would others trust her after everything that had happened? As if sensing her hesitation, Elena leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. Look, I know it's a lot to take in. But here's the thing, Arya, you've already inspired countless people. You've shown them that standing up for what's right isn't just possible, it's necessary. Imagine what you could accomplish with a team behind you, with backing from one of the most influential companies in the world. That sealed it. Arya nodded, determination flooding back into her veins. I'm in, she said firmly. But on one condition. Name it. This division needs to prioritize diversity and inclusion, not as buzzwords, but as fundamental principles. Too often, marginalized voices are silenced because they don't fit the mold. If we're going to create lasting change, those voices need to be front and center. Elena smiled, clearly pleased. Agreed. Consider it done. Months later, Arya stood on stage at Technova's annual summit, addressing a crowd of thousands. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the logo of the newly launched initiative, EthosWorks. It had become a beacon of hope for workers everywhere, earning praise from industry leaders and grassroots organizations alike. Under Arya's leadership, EthosWorks had successfully partnered with dozens of companies to implement reforms, from eliminating discriminatory dress codes to establishing anonymous reporting systems for misconduct. Coldwell's empire, meanwhile, had crumbled under the weight of scandal. Investigations revealed a pattern of unethical behavior extending far beyond the Technova deal, leading to lawsuits, resignations, and public disgrace. The irony wasn't lost on Arya, that his obsession with appearances had ultimately been his undoing. But her focus wasn't on revenge anymore. Instead, she poured her energy into mentoring young professionals, helping them navigate the complexities of corporate life while staying true to themselves. She also became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness in the workplace, sharing her own struggles with burnout and imposter syndrome. One evening, as she sat in her cozy apartment reviewing plans for EthosWorks' next project, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Elena. Elena Vasquez. Just heard the latest numbers. Another record-breaking quarter for EthosWorks. You've earned this, Arya. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. Arya smiled, setting her phone aside. Outside her window, the city sparkled with life, its lights reflecting off her walls like stars. For so long, she'd felt trapped in a system designed to break her spirit. But now she realized she'd found her purpose, not in climbing ladders or playing games, but in building bridges. As she settled into bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her, she thought about all the lives touched by EthosWorks. The single mom who no longer feared losing her job for requesting flexible hours. The young intern whose innovative idea was finally taken seriously. The veteran employee who felt seen and valued for the first time in decades. And then, as sleep claimed her, she whispered softly to herself, "This is just the beginning." In the end, Arya's journey wasn't just about surviving betrayal, it was about thriving despite it. About turning pain into purpose, anger into action, and fear into hope. She proved that even in the darkest moments, light could still shine through. And in doing so, she changed not only her own life but the lives of countless others. It was, as she often reminded herself, a victory worth fighting for.